Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for September 21st, 2025. And I'm Jada Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us as on this episode, we are talking about June Squibb the Great.
That's the review.
Who is a national treasure. Yes.
We can end this episode right now.
Get out of here. No, ELEANOR the Great. This is a film that actually premiered over at Cannes earlier in the year. It is the directorial debut of one Scarlett Johansson. Yes, that's Scarlett Johansson.
That's interesting.
Very
it's
interesting.
so interesting.
Yeah, she, for whatever reason, decided to helm this one. Certainly helps get it made, that is for sure. And I do love that even in her 90s, we are finally getting the era of June Squibb, the movie star, the lead actress.
I love it. Yeah.
It's incredible. So I think that alone is worth seeing this film and talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm going to note here before we get going as well. So I watched ELEANOR the Great. The next night, I watched this movie called Twinless. We are planning on reviewing Twinless next week on the show alongside the new Paul Thomas Anderson film. What's fascinating, so I watched those two films back-to-back nights. They are almost the exact same movie.
That's wild. That is
crazy.
So wild. I have not seen Twinless yet, so now I'm really going to be looking for that.
Now, of course, the premise, well, the details around the premise, I should say, are quite different. Obviously, they're not the exact same movie in terms of topicality, but in terms of structure and things characters choose, almost verbatim the same. It was quite weird.
That's insane. Wow. Well, now I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. One movie is much better than the other. I will say that as well. Sometimes it just goes to show that you can have two different things that look and feel the same, but one is actually just much better than the other. So,
well, I know where you already stand on Twinless, so that pretty much, at least plays your cards for me as to how you feel about ELEANOR the Great.
Absolutely. All right. With that said, are we ready to get into ELEANOR the Great?
Let's talk about maybe something great.
Yep. All right. This film is, you're never going to believe this, directed by Scarlett Johansson. And it stars June Squibb, Erin Kellyman, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Jessica Hecht, Rita Zohar, and others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with ELEANOR the Great, after a devastating loss, witty and proudly troublesome Eleanor Morgenstein, who is 94 years old, tells a tale that takes on a dangerous life of its own.
It's pretty vague. It's very vague, actually.
Yeah. The premise on Wikipedia, I think, is also interesting. Very different than that. It just says, Eleanor Morgenstein, a 94-year-old Floridian woman, strikes up an unlikely friendship with a 19-year-old student in New York City. Which, that gets, I guess, to the...
Oh my gosh, these plot synopses suck.
Well, you can't...
They're
there
not
are
wrong.
certain details you got to leave out, yeah.
Well, there's a huge conflict that really is the talking point of this movie. And it's, I feel like we have to talk about it. We at least have to acknowledge it. It's not really a spoiler. The main conflict arises within the first third of the movie.
I agree. And I think it is worth noting because it's quite vague. And we are going to talk about this film in why these characters choose what they do. But yes, Eleanor has this close friend in Florida who passes away early on in this film. That is not a spoiler. That's in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And as a result, she decides to move back to New York City.
Yeah.
Where she is from originally. And she's moving in with her daughter and grandson. And she is supposed to go to some class that her daughter had set up.
It's a singing class or something like that. Yeah.
But walks into a different class accidentally, which happens to be a Holocaust survivor class, like group therapy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as I noted, the 19-year-old New York City student in question here, Nina, played by Erin Kellyman, she is watching this class because she's a journalism student at school and is going to do some sort of report on this group.
Yeah.
And then June Squibb gets involved and starts telling tales that, as the IMDb synopsis states, takes on a dangerous life of its own.
Because they're not hers.
Because they're not hers.
Yeah, that's the thing. Her friend that she has known for, I guess, 50 years and who she was living with in Florida is a Holocaust survivor. And it's her stories that she is telling, but she's telling them as her own, as if they are her stories. And I will give the movie some credit here before I get into my thoughts on the movie itself. I do think that's a pretty interesting premise as to how one chooses to grieve by putting themselves into someone else's shoes and making it your own story, as if that's their way of not letting them go. I think that's a pretty psychologically interesting way of going about this.
No, I agree. And again, all of that happens in like the first 10, 15 minutes of this movie.
Yeah,
so
that's the rising action.
That's just kind of the setup of it. Yes. I guess it's also worth noting that Nina, we find out that her mother had recently passed away. Again, this is something we find out early on, but that grief is also important to the evolution of this film and where it goes. Okay, with all of that laid out, Brendan, what did you think about Eleanor / June Squibb?
Okay, well, you just asked two completely different questions that way.
I did. Actually, that was very unfair to ask it that way.
Yeah, what do I think of June Squibb the Great? She is great. Yeah. What do I think of Eleanor the Great? It's not great. That's
fair.
That's two answers there. I wanted to spend more time talking about the setup and the actual plot synopsis here because I think it's actually more interesting than the movie itself and how it chooses to sell that plot synopsis. And you know what criticism, JD, I am absolutely sick of talking about when it comes to certain reviews. And I feel like we've talked about this quite a few times this year, where we say something like, this movie would completely fall apart if not for this performance or these performances, right? We just got done talking about that with The Long Walk, right? Talking about Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson in that movie and how the movie surrounding them is not up to par, but their performances really make the movie work ultimately. Without June Squibb, I'm not sure if this works. I think she is quite terrific here. She's always been terrific, but she carries this thing in a way where it's almost like it feels unscripted. It's almost as if Scarlett Johansson just simply said, you're June Squibb, you know what you're doing, just do your thing, which is sometimes a great trait in a director. When they know they have a certain actor who's capable of something, they exercise a certain level of restraint and just let their performer do their thing. And I do appreciate that. And if not for June Squibb, I'm not sure if this movie would have worked all that well. I think as a movie, it's surprisingly passive, given that really interesting plot synopsis that we talked about there. I don't want to say the movie feels directionless, but it doesn't really feel like Scarlett Johansson is trying to do anything interesting with this material. And you mentioned it earlier. Perhaps this is something that she just wanted to see get made. And from what I read, this is something she was sort of passionate about because she wanted a movie that talked about grief, but also talked about her own Jewish heritage. But it feels more like she was simply a producer on this movie who then got tapped to direct it at the last minute. It's not one of those cases where we see an actor taking on the role of director for the first time and they try to imbue it with something sort of new and invigorating. There's none of that here. And that's not to say a movie like this needs some type of flashiness. It doesn't. But I think it needed something that showcased that the movie was trying for something that felt like a movie, right? And it just does not do that. It is solely relying on June Squibb to do all of the work. And she's a talented enough actress that she can make it work, which is why I think I might still recommend this in a way, because I think I just want people to see her work. I just want people to see how good she is. But I don't think the movie is doing any of the work. I really don't. And I think it's unfortunate because there's a clever setup here. And I think it has a pretty interesting notion on grief and how we explore that, that I wish it went through in a bit more, with a bit more cogency.
Yeah, I would love to see set photos for this film because until proven otherwise, I don't know if Scarlett Johansson actually did anything. And I don't necessarily say that to be mean, but I don't know genuinely if she was even there. They just slapped her name as directed by, because there is no unified vision here. And it does feel very much direct for hire. We just got done talking about a big, beautiful, bold, beautiful journey and how maybe that was a director for hire with Kogonada. Look, you can feel Kogonada all over that film.
He's trying. He's trying. Things.
He's doing things. I don't see Scarlett Johansson doing anything here. Like I don't
see
know
anyone doing anything. This feels like a series of still images where people are just walking in and out of frame.
Yeah, pretty much. I do feel like this film is directionless, which is kind of a problem. The storytelling is quite bland and trite, which is unfortunate because I do agree with you. I think the setup and the premise is quite interesting. And as I alluded to in my opening or pre-opening thoughts, you can take a premise like this and do it very well. We'll talk about that next week. So it's not the premise. It's certainly not the premise, and it's not the central performance. Because I agree with you, June Squibb here is really quite great. And what I love about her performance is, of course, she is hysterical. She's very, very funny. Even at 94 years old, she knows how to deliver a punchline immaculately.
I love the supermarket scene that opens up the movie. I love that.
It's so good. Her comedic timing throughout this whole film is just incredible. And I love her rapport with Aaron Kellyman as well. They do have a great chemistry. And I do love how Eleanor, who is, of course, stealing someone else's story as she is coping simultaneously as with Nina. But there's not an over sentimentality with June Squibb and her performance. Now, some of that is born out of awareness, Eleanor's awareness that she is stealing someone else's identity.
Yeah.
And so she had a choice where she could overplay that up or do it subtly and really only tap into it when necessary. And that's ultimately the path she chooses. I do wish the film would have explored that more, because ultimately there is a duality, a dividing line where the film either wants to or needs to explore the Eleanor-Nina dynamic, that relationship and how they are bonding over shared grief, or do we explore further Eleanor and why she feels the need to steal Bessie's story? I don't think the film does a great job of doing the latter.
I
really
agree.
Only comes in to move the plot forward. And we don't really get into the psychology of it all, which I think is unfortunate because June Squibb, I think, is good enough to tap into that, but the film doesn't really ask her to. It's really there as a convenience from a scripting perspective. And really leans more into the Eleanor-Nina thing. And that is good enough. Again, I think that dynamic is great. So them bonding over shared grief, for sure. But I like that dynamic enough that there's still a bubbling emotional underbelly to the film regarding those two that I did appreciate. But as it relates to identity and truth and memory, and how this film could have really gave meaning to this stolen valor, if you will. That's pretty weightless here. There's no bite to it in this film.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, I think that's a really interesting idea, a psychologically interesting idea as to how one chooses to grieve that stolen valor, that idea that you have to live someone else's story as your own, and that's how you choose to grieve someone that you love. Like, why is someone doing that? I think that why is more interesting than really anything else we get here, and the film doesn't really seem interested in exploring that. There are even more missed opportunities to showcase Eleanor as someone that has this internal conflict as to whether what she's doing has now become sort of right, because in a way, by continuing this lie, it also means preserving Nina's reputation and how she has written a great story around Eleanor because of this lie. So all of a sudden now the truth will ruin her reputation as well as her father's reputation. So yeah, because I think she learns from the local rabbi at the local temple that a lie is not bad if it means it's actually helping someone else. And by that point, the lie is now potentially helping someone else just for the wrong reasons. So there is there's a morality here that I think is potentially interesting, but the movie, as you said, is more interested in the cutesiness of this relationship. And that's fine for what it is, but it's the much tamer approach. It's not the biting approach that I would have preferred.
I agree. And I think part of the weightlessness that we feel here, it comes about because of Rita Zohar's performance as well on the other side of it, who I think is also really good.
I agree.
And it comes through in those few moments where that stolen valor is coming from Eleanor, where she is forced to speak about her Holocaust experiences, quote unquote, which are really Bessie's. And the film, instead of showing us Eleanor regurgitating those words, we go back to Bessie emotionally unraveling in front of Eleanor and talking about her survival of the Holocaust. And Rita Zohar is incredible. She's really, really good in those moments and giving birth to those atrocities and the trauma that she is feeling even all these years later. So the lack of exploring that why, I think, is really unfortunate because it ultimately undermines that performance. Again, there's no bite to it because
it turns her into an object. She's just a catalyst or a MacGuffin in many ways.
Exactly. So as much as we want, like, I feel like any weight that is there really comes down to Zohar's performance and just the general broad empathy that we have for victims of the Holocaust, which that isn't on the film is not doing the work at that point. That's just us.
That's just human
as
nature.
Human beings being aware of the Holocaust and knowing that it was this horrible tragedy. That's what's doing the work.
Absolutely.
And so the film is being lazy by not really exploring the why and really giving weight to Eleanor and her choices. Why would she do this? We don't really know, other than you can infer that it's part of her coping and she doesn't want Bessie to be forgotten. So again, that's all conjecture though. Like we just have to infer those things.
Yeah, because many people, normal people, would choose to grieve in certain ways that are more appropriate than simply stealing their stories and living them as your own. Like that's a really interesting idea. And, personally, if I'm grieving someone, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to live their story as my own or claim their awesome story as mine. It's just, I'm not wired that way. It's a way of grieving that I just don't buy. But I want to hear a perspective on that makes me understand why someone would do that. And sadly, this movie doesn't go far enough. It simply just tells us that, okay, Eleanor was lonely. She was selfish. She wanted to preserve her friend's legacy and chose to do it in her own way by saying it was hers. But I got to be honest, that's not enough. I don't think that's enough here, unfortunately.
I agree. I don't think it's enough either. And again, given how things play out in the end, it gives this film this manufactured quality that takes away from any potential emotion that could be there. And anything that does work there, it is exclusively June Squibb.
And she's really funny. I mean, she might as well be a co-writer in this movie because, like I said earlier, there are moments here where I feel like she's just ad-libbing, where there's no script. And like some of the scenes that she has with her daughter, I think are very funny. I think they're really effective because they feel as if there was some kind of like this, like if Scarlett Johansson was there on set. And I'm with you. I'm not sure if I buy it, but if she was, it almost seems as though her directing style for those scenes was, okay, I'm walking in today. Here's a funny conflict. Roll with it and action. Which honestly, like that's kind of clever if that is how it went down. And there are times it does feel that way. And that's the June Squibb magic. She's just so good at that type of improvisational prickliness, if you want to call it anything. But I think those sequences are very good just simply because June Squibb's really funny and really effective there.
Very funny and effective, which is why I go back to, okay, if you're not going to give us the why, then maybe do a little bit more. Maybe just exclusively go into the Eleanor Nina thing, because that dynamic I do think is great. Even if it leads to a revelation by the end that's maybe a little bit schmaltzy.
It's very conventional. Like, you know where it's going by the time it reaches its second act, really.
Which, by the way, I saw this trailer, the trailer for Eleanor the Great, as I was in theaters to watch A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. And the trailer just gives that away. Like, the big reveal, emotional reveal at the end of this film is just flatly in the trailer.
That's hilarious. I have not seen this trailer. And when I went to go and see A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, I got there late. So I think I only saw the trailer for Wicked for Good, and then the movie started. So I got kind of lucky there.
You did good.
Yeah, I did good. But it was sort of an accident, but I did good. So I did not see this trailer for Eleanor the Great, but that's hilarious. If it actually just plays its card.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there shaking my head going, why on earth would you just give that away? But, you know.
That's hilarious. That's great.
That's why I avoid trailers if I can. I just don't pay attention if at all possible.
I don't blame you.
I only perked up because I had already seen the film, so I was curious what the trailer would be, and I regret it. Like, it's so dumb. At any rate, like that reveal at the end, it is conventional. You see it coming. I don't think there's really all that much to it, emotionally speaking. But I do think the Eleanor Nina relationship is really good. And the conflict with her father, as trite as it is, if there is any weight to it, I think it actually does kind of come back to how Eleanor helps Nina learn how to cope with grief. And she's only 19, and her mom had recently passed away. So it is something that is very new to her. And even though a lot of what Eleanor is doing is manufactured by her own choices, she is grieving in a real way, though. Bessie does die, and the opening scenes of the film make it clear that they are really close friends. That whole grocery store scene, I agree with you. It is fantastic. The whole pickles thing.
If I ever go to my local grocery store and see kosher pickles on the wall, I'm going to always think of that scene. So, okay, that means the movie has left an imprint on me. I'll simply say that, but that's not for the right reasons. That has nothing really to do with the actual movie itself. It's just a great scene in an otherwise mediocre movie.
I agree. Which is ultimately why, like, it just feels like a series of scenes that just get us from one moment to the next that allows June Squibb to be June Squibb. And look, that's not necessarily a bad playbook because she is really great, but that definitely doesn't make for a good movie, though.
No, I'm with you.
It gives space for June Squibb to give a great performance, and really not much else.
Yeah. What did you think of Chiwetel Ejiofor in this? I know he's not in the movie really all that much to leave an impact, but like did you think he was effective at all? Even the character that he plays, do you think was really effective in the nature of where it
No.
goes? No?
I look, I think he's fine, but again, I think the material here very much underserves him because he's asked to give this reveal that again is weirdly in the trailer, and all like the setup to that is extremely obvious. And again, like I don't know how necessary that is, especially when there's enough conflict between, maybe conflict is the wrong word, but there's enough of that Eleanor Nina dynamic. And I really wanted the film to explore why Eleanor is doing what she's doing, as we noted earlier. So to have this third thread that just kind of dangles there, it didn't really do much for me.
The character he plays, Roger, who's also Nina's father, I have a big problem with the action that he makes at the end, and I don't think the movie is intending for it to be kind of prickly. And I don't know what was in the trailer that you said it gives it away. Is it the news thing that it's that?
Segment.
So it's
about
that whole
his wife.
segment. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that scene is horrible, and that's primarily because we don't get enough of Roger to justify it, because even in that moment, to me, it almost felt more like he's just telling the story for his own show's publicity. I didn't really quite buy it past that, and I think that's simply because we just don't get enough of Roger to play a part in that grieving game. I don't really know how you fix that. If anything, maybe the Nina and Roger characters should have somehow been combined. Like maybe Nina was the one that had her own show or something like that. I don't know. But since we don't get nearly enough of him, by the time he makes that choice at the end to tell the story in the way that he does, I'm not sure if I bought it. I just felt like he was there to, oh, my show needs a story. There's a story here, so I'm still going to exploit it. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, if I'm being honest.
That's interesting. I wasn't rubbed the wrong way. I found it
kind of fleeting,
conventional and trite. I do think the film builds up to it cogently. There's several conversations Nina has with Eleanor about how Roger hasn't opened up. He's been quite distant. You know, she takes these classes only for him to notice her. The film kind of builds up to the idea, even though we don't get to know Roger at all, but it's pretty clear that there is some sort of gap between him and his daughter. He's, pretty quiet, stoic mostly throughout this film.
Right.
And Nina expresses to Eleanor why that is the case. So it makes sense logically to me how, or like Roger being kind of like coping with grief in a very different way than Nina.
Sure. Okay.
So I think all of that was pretty clear, but again, like I think the reveal that we get there, it's to me, it's just mostly schmaltzy and unearned.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what it is.
Distracts from the main thing.
Well, I think the movie's intent is for us to buy into his exploration of grief live on air like that. And I do think that is what it's going for. And I know that it's not going for something kind of cynical, like I mentioned earlier. It feels like it comes off that way because there's something incomplete about the exploration of that character. And it's almost like an accidental byproduct of the fact that you have this character doing this who is kind of famous, as the movie sets him up as. So if you're going to do that, I think we need more work done with that character to make it feel like anything other than just a me moment, if that makes sense.
I think the moment would work pretty well if it was from the perspective of Nina instead of a television broadcast. The camera is just on Nina as she hears the things that her father's doing, and then we get the reaction. We get a little bit of that, but it's more of a back and forth thing. It's like that moment is about both of them, maybe even more so Roger confessing that I've been a bad father and I haven't said my wife's name a single time.
Yeah. It treats him like a main character in the story when he never was.
When he never was. Yeah. Nina, on the other hand, is a main character.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
Her father being distant from her is a big part of her grieving process. It's one thing to lose your mother, but she's also feeling as if she's lost her father as well because she's gone, or he's gone, excuse me, essentially.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great
like,
point.
if you get the moment from her perspective, then I think you kind of earn it there. But that goes back to, again, like how directionless this film is. Like, there's really no thumbprint here or any identity as to.
There's no, you're right. I didn't want to use the word directionless in my opening thoughts, but it really is directionless. There's no one behind the camera guiding this thing.
No, if there was, then maybe you get, like, there's an understanding that, oh, hey, Nina's a main character. Maybe we focus more on her in this moment.
Sure.
But again, it feels like the studio directed this. And again, they just slapped Scarlett Johansson's name on for marketing purposes. That's what it feels like.
Yep.
Now, maybe this is personal to her. I know you mentioned earlier that she recently had discovered more about her own personal family's history with the Holocaust, and that might have provoked her to want to direct this movie. So I don't want to be insensitive to that. This might have been personal to her, but I just don't, like, I didn't feel that here in her direction.
No, it felt more like she was a producer that put up the money to get it made because she wanted to see it get it made, and that was really it.
I agree. That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
I didn't feel any personality, any intimacy as far as her connection or anyone else's connection to this material.
Yeah, missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah. The only deeply personal like thing to this film at all, I felt like, was Rita Zohar and her performance. And if I'm not mistaken, I do think she is an actual Holocaust survivor.
I think you're
I read
right.
that somewhere.
I think you're right, which honestly makes it one of the better supporting actress performances of the year, just given the meta qualities of it. And I do appreciate that. But it's sadly, I wish she was in the movie more in that case.
I agree. I agree. Like, I honestly, I think you need to cut out the Roger stuff altogether, and there needs to be, like, if you put more weight on Bessie and that initial relationship with Eleanor, and then emphasize why Eleanor decides to steal valor, so to speak, like, then you have something really complex and meaty here to chew on.
Yeah.
Look, why the film avoids that, I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Honestly, I love the setup for this movie, and when I mean setup, I really mean the first like 5 to 10 minutes. I thought were quite good.
Yeah. No, I agree. And maybe the film simply wants to be more of a comedy than anything else, and so it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, given the gravitas of what the topic is here. You know, and again, June Squibb is hysterical. She is very funny.
She's
so
great.
To be fair to Johansson or Tori Kamen, who wrote the script, I don't know, or Columbia Pictures, like, maybe, like, I do think it is effective as a comedy, but unfortunately it also wants to be a drama. And I think it fails miserably at the lab.
There's no disconnect, or there's no connection there whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that covers it. It's not great.
Yeah.
June Squibb, great. Eleanor, not great.
Not the biggest fan of this, but really love June Squibb. I wish there was a better movie around her.
5 stars for her. Yeah, 5 stars for her, maybe 2 stars for everything else.
I agree. I did really like Erin Kellyman as well, though.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She's very
she's good. She's good.
Like that moment early when she walks into her mom's like artistry room or whatever.
Oh yeah, her
was.
photography room. Yeah,
photography room. Oh my God, killer! Absolutely killer.
I agree. I think she's
that
effective.
Moment was great. That, you know, when she meets up with Eleanor and has that breakdown in the bathroom, I think is fantastic. Like, she's also really good here as well.
Yeah, very talented.
It's just those two. Like, it's Kellyman, it's Squibb. Really not much else.
If you want to see a movie about if you want to see a great movie about 2 great performances getting in touch with their Jewish heritage, A Real Pain is where it's at.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a very good movie.
Yeah.
It's also very funny.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm very much pro that statement. A real pain, much better than this one. But June Squibb, national treasure nonetheless.
Yeah.
Look, if I'm going to recommend this for June Squibb alone, especially given this era of June Squibb, the movie star, please go see this movie for that alone. I want this to be successful for her.
Me too.
So
She's 94 years old. It's amazing.
crazy. Absolutely wild. All right. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, you can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. We have another review already up. As we noted, Kogonada's A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. That was a really fun conversation.
Indeed.
Where we kind of defended that movie more so than a lot of other people.
Certainly not perfect. We spent a lot of time on why it's not perfect, and there's a lot of frustrations about why it's not perfect, but there are good things in it.
I agree. I think there are very good things in that movie.
Yeah.
Eleanor the Great, I wish there was more to it, but, it is what it is. But we've had fun talking about these two movies. Episode 655, we talk about our favorite Paul Thomas Anderson scenes.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you go and check that out. Really great conversation as well. There's going to be a new Chasing the Gold this week, a new Women in Session. It is that time of year.
Indeed.
The podcasting is a wild. There's lots of things going on at the moment. So make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned to everything going on. Of course, Dave and his team over at InSessionFilm.com are doing a fantastic job as well. Lots of good stuff happening. And then we got Paul Thomas Anderson this weekend. So we're all very excited. In fact, by the time this episode goes out, I would have already seen one battle after another. So I'm probably being annoying about that.
Of course. That's how PTA works in our circle. You see a PTA film, you can't shut up about it.
Can't. Really looking forward to it. All right. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast. June Squibb. Gotta love it.
That's the review.